Have you ever wondered if the problem wasn't the people around you, but maybe, just maybe, it was you? I know that sentence probably hit a nerve because it's unsettling to think about, but stay with me. We live in a world where everyone points fingers, everyone plays the victim, and very few stop to look in the mirror. And sometimes, that reflection reveals something we don't want to see: traits of narcissism. Not the full-blown disorder you hear about in movies, not always the manipulative villain destroying lives, but subtle behaviors that quietly show up in your relationships, in your intimacy, and in how you treat people who care about you. And the scary part? Most people who have these traits don't even realize it. Let me ask you, do you ever find yourself needing to be admired, needing to be praised, almost like oxygen? Do you sometimes feel frustrated when people don't give you the attention you think you deserve? Be honest. Have you ever dismissed someone's feelings because they didn't fit your narrative? These moments may seem small, harmless, even normal, but string them together and they form a pattern that can slowly poison love, trust, and intimacy. Here's the truth most won't tell you. Narcissism doesn't always scream. Sometimes it whispers. It hides behind confidence, ambition, even charm. And because it hides so well, many men go through their entire lives destroying relationships without realizing the common denominator was always them. Imagine building connection after connection, only to watch each one crumble. Imagine thinking every woman you date is too emotional or too demanding, when in reality, you were the one starving her of emotional safety. I'm not here to shame you. I'm here to uncover something you were never taught: how to recognize if you carry these traits, and how to face them before they rob you of love. Because the truth is, many men are walking around with narcissistic patterns that were born from childhood wounds, from trying to prove themselves, from protecting their ego in a world that punishes vulnerability. But here's the paradox. The very thing you use to protect yourself might be the same thing that keeps love away. So ask yourself right now, what if the behaviors you thought were strength, confidence, or leadership were actually red flags of narcissism? One of the most common traits of narcissism is the hunger for validation. Think about it. How often do you find yourself scrolling through your phone, checking if she replied, replaying her words, trying to decode if she admired you enough? Do you secretly measure your worth by the attention women give you, the compliments you receive, or the way people react when you walk into a room? That constant craving for external approval isn't confidence, it's dependence. And when you depend on validation to feel whole, you hand over control of your identity to other people. Narcissistic patterns often mask themselves as ambition. You tell yourself, "I just want to be respected," or "I work this hard so people notice me." But here's the brutal truth. If your value comes from how others see you, then you don't actually know who you are. And without knowing who you are, every relationship will feel like a performance. You'll need her to admire you, to worship you, to feed your ego just to keep your self-esteem afloat. And at first, she may do it. She may adore your confidence, your drive, your charm. But over time, she will notice that her role is not to love you, but to constantly refill your emotional tank. That doesn't feel like love to her. It feels like exhaustion. Here's the dangerous cycle. The more she gives, the less it feels like enough. No compliment, no admiration, no sexual attention will ever satisfy you for long, because the emptiness isn't outside, it's inside. And this is how narcissistic traits quietly sabotage intimacy. She doesn't leave because she stopped loving you. She leaves because she got tired of being a mirror instead of a partner. You might believe this constant chase for admiration makes you powerful, but it actually reveals the deepest vulnerability. It shows you don't trust your own worth without proof from someone else. Real confidence doesn't need clapping. Real masculinity doesn't demand validation. It radiates naturally, with or without an audience. But narcissism flips that. It tricks you into thinking you're strong, while secretly making you the weakest man in the room. So I'll ask you, Do you admire yourself when no one is watching? Or do you only feel valuable when someone else reminds you? That answer might reveal more about you than you want to admit. Another trait that often slips under the radar is a lack of genuine empathy. I want you to sit with this for a moment, because most men will swear they care, they'll swear they listen, but caring and truly feeling someone's emotions are two very different things. Think about the last time a woman in your life opened up about her struggles, her fears, her insecurities. Did you really hear her? Or did you listen just long enough to respond with something about yourself? Did you dismiss her emotions as overreacting, or tell her she was too sensitive? Because if you did, you may not have realized it, but you were minimizing her reality to protect your own comfort. Narcissism thrives on deflection. When someone is in pain, instead of leaning in, you shift the focus back to yourself, your stress, your challenges, your victories. You might not even notice you're doing it, but the effect is the same. She walks away feeling unseen, unheard, and unloved. And here's the dangerous truth. Intimacy doesn't die when attraction fades. It dies the moment someone feels invisible. This lack of empathy doesn't always look cold or cruel. Sometimes it looks like silence, like avoiding emotional conversations because they make you uncomfortable. Sometimes it looks like telling her to stop overthinking when she's trying to express her deepest fears. Sometimes it's making jokes at the exact moment she needs reassurance. And while you may think you're keeping things light or strong, what you're really doing is teaching her that her emotions don't matter to you. That is emotional starvation. And when she's starved long enough, she will begin to disconnect from you, not because she doesn't care, but because caring for someone who doesn't feel for you back is like pouring water into a bucket full of holes. Eventually, she saves her energy, and you lose her without ever realizing where it went wrong. Men with narcissistic tendencies often confuse dominance with strength, but true strength is the ability to feel deeply without fear, to hold space for someone else's pain without making it about you, to listen not just to respond, but to understand. That is empathy. And if you struggle with it, if you find yourself impatient, dismissive, or emotionally detached, you need to ask yourself, is it that you can't feel her pain, or that you won't allow yourself to? Control. That's another trait of narcissism that hides in plain sight. At first, it doesn't look like control. It looks like leadership, decisiveness, even protection. You tell yourself you're just being a man, setting standards, guiding the relationship. But if you look closely, ask yourself, are you truly leading, or are you micromanaging? Do you expect her to agree with your choices, your timing, your vision, and feel irritated when she doesn't? Do you try to mold her into the version of a woman you want, instead of loving her as the woman she already is? That is control, disguised as care. Here's the bitter truth. Control is not strength. It's insecurity wearing a mask. When you feel the need to dictate how she dresses, who she talks to, how she spends her time, what she posts online, you're not protecting her, you're protecting your ego. You're saying, I can only feel safe if I control your behavior. But safety built on control is an illusion, because the moment she resists, your entire sense of power crumbles. That's why narcissistic men often swing between charm and rage. When she complies, you shower her with affection. When she resists, you punish her with silence, anger, or withdrawal. This push and pull creates a toxic rhythm that feels like passion, but it's really emotional captivity. And here's the worst part. She will start questioning herself. She'll wonder if maybe she is too independent, too opinionated, too difficult. She'll shrink herself just to keep the peace, and you'll confuse her silence with harmony. But it's not harmony, it's fear. A woman who is silenced is not a woman in love. She is a woman in survival mode. Men who control often believe they're building loyalty. But forced loyalty is not devotion, it's submission. And submission eventually breeds resentment, That resentment will sit quietly, slowly poisoning every kiss, every touch, every conversation until one day she explodes or she disappears. And you'll be left wondering why the love that seemed so strong vanished overnight. So ask yourself right now, do you want a partner who follows because she fears you, or a partner who chooses you freely because she trusts you? The answer will determine whether you build love or a prison. Another sign that you may carry narcissistic traits is entitlement. And this one is dangerous because it can hide behind the idea of, I deserve this. Think about your relationships. Do you believe that because you provide, because you work hard, because you're loyal, she owes you something in return? Do you believe affection, intimacy, and admiration should be automatic rewards for what you bring to the table? If so, you may not realize it, but you've turned love into a transaction. And nothing kills genuine connection faster than the weight of obligation. Entitlement whispers in subtle ways. It's expecting her to be available for your desires even when she's tired. It's assuming she should drop everything for you while you protect your own time fiercely. It's believing her body, her attention, her care are things you are owed, not gifts she chooses to give. That mindset quietly transforms intimacy from an act of love into an act of duty. And when intimacy feels like duty, passion dies. Here's the hard truth. Just because you give doesn't mean you automatically deserve in return. Love is not a contract. She doesn't owe you sex because you paid for dinner. She doesn't owe you admiration because you worked late. She doesn't owe you loyalty because you exist in her life. Love, respect, and intimacy are choices freely given. When you demand them, when you act as if they're a debt she must repay, you are no longer connecting. You are controlling through entitlement. The tragedy is, entitlement often blinds men to the reality of their relationships. You might believe she's ungrateful or distant, when really she's suffocating under the invisible weight of your expectations. You might see her pulling away and think, she doesn't appreciate me. But the truth is, she's tired of being treated like property instead of a partner. Entitlement doesn't make you powerful, it makes you fragile. Because the moment she doesn't give what you expect, your sense of worth collapses. And that's when resentment, anger, or emotional withdrawal take over. That cycle destroys trust and intimacy faster than any argument ever could. So I'll ask you this, are you giving because you love? Or are you giving because you expect a return? The answer will reveal whether you're building a relationship or a transaction. Let's talk about another trait, the inability to handle criticism. For many men with narcissistic tendencies, feedback feels like an attack. Instead of hearing a partner's words as an opportunity to grow, you hear them as an insult, a challenge to your ego. Think about it. How do you react when she says, I feel like you don't listen to me, or I wish you'd spend more time with me? Do you take it personally, get defensive, shut down, or fire back with your own list of complaints? That knee-jerk reaction isn't strength, it's fragility disguised as pride. Here's the uncomfortable truth. A man who cannot handle criticism is a man who cannot grow. And if you cannot grow, every relationship you enter will eventually suffocate. Because women don't want perfection, they want progress. They don't need you to be flawless, but they need to see that you're willing to hear, to adapt, to evolve. Without that, love turns into a one-sided effort where she's bending, adjusting, and compromising, while you remain rigid. And rigidity breaks under pressure. Narcissistic men often mistake criticism for disrespect, when in reality, it's often a plea for connection. When she says she feels unheard, she's not insulting you. She's begging you to see her. When she says she feels alone, she's not tearing you down. She's reaching out to bring you closer. But if your pride is louder than her pain, you'll miss the chance to deepen intimacy. Instead, you'll silence her with defensiveness, and eventually, she'll stop trying. That silence won't feel like peace. It will feel like distance. And here's where it gets darker. The more you resist criticism, the more you surround yourself with people who only feed your ego. Friends who hype you up, women who flatter you, situations where you're never challenged. It feels good in the moment, but it weakens you. Because real strength isn't about avoiding discomfort. It's about facing it. Ask yourself this: are you the kind of man who can be corrected without collapsing? Can you hear the truth, even when it stings, without needing to defend, deflect, or destroy the messenger? Because the man who can handle criticism is the man who becomes unstoppable in love, in growth, in life. The man who can't stays trapped in the prison of his own ego. Another trait that reveals narcissism is emotional manipulation. And this one is dangerous because it often hides in the smallest interactions. It's when you use guilt to get your way. It's when you twist her words until she doubts her own memory. It's when you say things like, "If you really loved me, you'd do this," or "You're crazy, that never happened." These are not just arguments, they are tactics. And whether you realize it or not, they slowly strip away her ability to trust herself. That's not love, that's control through confusion. Think about the times you've pulled away emotionally, not because you needed space, but because you wanted her to chase you. Think about the moments you've exaggerated your sacrifices just to make her feel guilty for not giving more. Think about when you've minimized her feelings so that she questions whether she was overreacting. That's emotional manipulation, and it leaves scars far deeper than most men ever realize. Here's the brutal truth: manipulation works in the short term. She may give in, she may apologize, she may bend to keep the peace, but in the long term, it destroys the foundation of love. Because love cannot survive in an environment where truth is twisted. Intimacy dies when one person constantly feels like they're walking through a maze of doubt, guilt, and second-guessing. And the tragedy is, many men who manipulate don't see themselves as manipulators. They see themselves as strategic, as persuasive, as dominant. But there is a thin line between persuasion and coercion. Persuasion inspires choice. Coercion removes it. And when she loses her ability to choose freely, she doesn't feel like your partner. She feels like your prisoner. Ask yourself honestly, do you argue to understand, or do you argue to win? Do you use silence, anger, or guilt as weapons to bend her will? Do you feel satisfied when she finally breaks down and agrees with you, not because she wants to, but because she's too exhausted to fight? If so, you're not building connection. You're building compliance. And compliance will never feel like love. So the question is, do you want a woman who stays because she feels trapped, or a woman who stays because she feels safe? The answer will reveal everything about the kind of love you are capable of giving. The final trait that exposes narcissism is the inability to take responsibility. Think carefully. When things go wrong in your life, do you point outward or inward? Do you blame the ex who didn't understand you, the boss who never valued you, the world that never gave you a fair shot? Or do you sit with yourself and ask, what role did I play in this? Because here's the truth. Narcissism thrives in blame. It protects itself by painting everyone else as the villain, while keeping you as the misunderstood hero. But real growth begins the moment you stop pointing fingers and start looking in the mirror. Taking responsibility doesn't make you weak. It makes you unstoppable. Because when you own your flaws, you gain the power to change them. When you acknowledge the pain you've caused, you gain the ability to heal it. But when you hide behind excuses, you stay trapped in the same patterns, repeating the same heartbreaks, wondering why love always slips through your fingers. The men who refuse to take responsibility live in cycles. The men who face themselves break those cycles and build legacies. Maybe right now, as you listen, you're realizing you've seen pieces of yourself in these words. Maybe you've recognized the need for validation, the lack of empathy, the need for control, the entitlement, the fragility under criticism, the manipulation, or the refusal to take blame. That recognition isn't shame, It's awakening. And awakening is rare, because most men never dare to look at themselves this honestly. If you are feeling uneasy, it means a part of you knows it's time to change. You don't have to be trapped by narcissism. You can choose to become aware, to unlearn, to practice empathy, to build instead of destroy, to listen instead of dismiss, to lead with love instead of control. But it starts with one choice, the choice to stop running from yourself. So I'll leave you with this question. When the people in your life think about you, do they feel seen, safe, and loved? Or do they feel invisible, drained, and controlled? Answer honestly in the comments below. And if this message hit you, share it with a friend who needs to hear it. Subscribe for more truth. And remember, real strength isn't about control, it's about connection. The man who understands this doesn't just attract love, he keeps it.